According to a surprise report, China tested a nuclear hypersonic missile this past August that circled the globe, demonstrating the communist nation's advanced space capabilities. Today, China denied the report, saying the test was just a, quote, routine spacecraft experiment. This is from CNN. China's Ministry of Foreign Affairs spokesperson Zhao Lijian said this was an experiment to verify the reusable technology of spacecraft, which is of great significance for reducing the cost of spacecraft use. It can provide a convenient and cheap way for humans to use space peacefully. Many companies in the world have carried out similar experiments. Let's dive into this a little bit. Dean Cheng, the senior research fellow at the Heritage Foundation, he joins now to discuss. Dean, thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
So let's talk about this. Why are we reading about a hypersonic missile and space capabilities from China? And one, there seems to be almost a bit of surprise from the media out there, and two, a bit of alarm. What's going on here?
That's a great question. Frankly, I'm somewhat bewildered myself. We know the Chinese have been working on hypersonic capabilities. The DoD's annual report to Congress has listed this as one of the key technology areas the Chinese have been researching for years. This is a capability that the U.S. and Russia are also experimenting with. In fact, both Russia and the United States have done their own hypersonic tests in the last 6 months. What is stunning, though, is if these reports are accurate, that the Chinese orbited this thing rather than simply firing it up and letting it come down as you would with a normal ballistic missile. If the Chinese actually orbited a hypersonic payload, what that means is that every Chinese satellite we now have to think about as a potential nuclear weapons carrier or a hypersonic carrier, because if you smash something into the ground at hypersonic velocities, you're going to wind up doing damage, even if it's just a block of concrete.
And so how far along do we think the Chinese technology is here? I mean, I think a lot of people just reading about this and learning about it perhaps for the first time would be thinking, are the Chinese as advanced, perhaps even more advanced than the U.S. in some of these capabilities? Is that possible? Do we have deterrence against this? I mean, where does this put us in the technological and military technology race?
So in terms of deterrence, it's not clear that this actually changes things. We still have nuclear weapons that can target China, and China has nuclear weapons that can target us. But in terms of the technology, one of the things that people haven't paid much attention to is wind tunnels. That sounds like old technology, right? Except that China has been investing a lot of money in building very modern wind tunnels that can go to very high Mach numbers. This is something we have not chosen to invest in. When you look at the number of supercomputers that China owns and the number of wind tunnels they have, that adds up to a lot of research and development capability. So I would say, yeah, the Chinese are probably equal, if not ahead of us, in the realm of hypersonics.
And when hypersonics become further along and when some of this technology is perfected, what are the applications of this? I mean, you know, it sounds very futuristic. What would it mean if this kind of research continues on? What capabilities would it give the Chinese?
Well, in terms of military capabilities, especially with a hypersonic glide vehicle, you'd have something that could try to avoid our missile defenses. If you smash something at hypersonic velocity into an aircraft carrier, that carrier's out of action. It's not sunk. On the other hand, NASA and others have also been looking at hypersonic passenger vehicles and cargo carriers, so that you could really be able to move people and at least high value small quantities of stuff anywhere in the world in potentially just literally a few hours. I mean, when you consider that it takes 6 to 8 hours just to go to London, the ability to move a special forces team or very important technological items to South Africa, Australia, or Japan in, say, 3 hours would be huge.
Right. Press Secretary Jen Psaki was asked a question today on China's nuclear hypersonic missile technology. Here's what she said.
We've made clear our concern about the military capabilities that the PRC continues to pursue. And we have been consistent in our approach with China. We welcome stiff competition, but do not want that competition to veer into conflict, and that is certainly what we convey privately as well.
So this White House, it seems, has a pretty um, quiet sounding approach to China. I mean, I want to know what you think about it, considering some of the more bellicose rhetoric from the Chinese Communist Party about Taiwan in just recent weeks. It seems like the Biden approach is to just allow status quo. What are they doing?
Well, if I remember right, White House Press Secretary Psaki also said that Kabul was a great success. So suffice to say that I think the assessments that come out of this White House are sometimes a little more optimistic than maybe they should be. This is also a White House that has John Kerry working for it, and Kerry has come out and said, you know what, human rights should take a backseat to climate change concerns. We should start importing Chinese solar panels again. So I see a White House that looks at Kabul as a success, looks at cooperating with China on climate change as being a top priority. And I'm therefore not surprised that they would say, military capabilities, so the Chinese have some. What's the big deal?
How concerned are you that maybe China views this Biden administration as so inept and in many ways discombobulated that going after Taiwan, maybe next year, maybe the year after that, who knows, but during this first Biden term, may be something that they decide to do?
Well, I think that the Chinese military, which hasn't fought a war since 1979, understands that it has limitations, it has potential shortcomings. So in that regard, I think that what we're seeing in the Taiwan Straits is an effort to use the Chinese military to pressure Taiwan without going so far as to invade. What worries me is how much our allies can retain confidence in us, especially when you look at the catastrophe, frankly, that was Kabul. And that was a military catastrophe. When you look at an administration that is desperate to have talks with the Chinese, as we saw at Anchorage. And, I mean, are we supposed to feel better when John Kerry says President Biden had no idea that France would be ticked off over the AUKUS deal? I mean, talk about kind of ignorant. So that's what worries me, is are our allies going to be confident in the United States? And are our enemies going to be deterred? Or are they thinking, this White House, maybe we can get away with things?
Dean, thanks for being with us. Appreciate it.